I'm so excited for today's panel. This is something I care deeply about. I am Cameron Rogers. I am a content creator, podcast host of Conversations with Cam, a part of the Dear Media Network, and a mom of two. And a lot of my content is focused on mental health, motherhood, and the intersection of the two. And something I feel very passionately about is creating a judgment-free space to talk about parenting and to be honest about it, because it's fucking hard and it's beautiful, and that can exist at the same time. So I'm very excited for today's panel. We have Brittany Xavier, Joanne Schneider, and Amy Chappell. Oh my God, Amy. You know what I said? I'm so nervous about names. Then literally I did it. And Kim Chappell.
Amy if you want. That's
Hi. Okay, so I would love if you guys could start with just a quick introduction of maybe what you do for your career, what your content is focused on for you, Brittany, and then also the age of your children, just to give some context.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Xavier. I'm a content creator, and I do fashion, beauty. I have some family moments on there. And what was the next part?
Age of your kids.
Oh, age of my kids. I have a 17-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, and I have an almost 1-year-old. And hopefully more, so we'll see, I don't know.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanne Schneider. I'm Oula's Chief Experience Officer. I have 2 boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, Miles and Wes. And just a quick background about what Oula is. Oula delivers comprehensive maternity and gynecology care before, during, and after pregnancy. And I was inspired to help start Oula after my own miscarriage experience, and I was shocked at how alone and isolated and unsupported I was for something that is just so common.
Hi everybody, my name is Kim Chappell. I am the Chief Brand Officer of Bobbie. We are an organic infant formula company that is here to support you no matter how you choose to feed your baby and trying to shake the stigma on those choices. I am a mom of 3. I have a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and I live in Austin, Texas.
So when it comes to the judgment-free parenting that I want to get into, something that I feel very passionately and strongly about is that there's no right way to do anything. And I think it's such an important message as a parent, honestly, as anyone, but especially when it comes to parenting. There's no right way to conceive. There's no right way to deliver. There's no right way to go through postpartum, even feeding your baby, parenting. Like, it's all so bio-individual, I believe. And even with my 2 boys, like, there's no right way to parent because they're 2 different individuals. I parent them very differently. And I had 2 very different deliveries. So Joanne, I would love for you to talk about, like, in terms of there's no right way, how is Oula really putting this at the top of their brand messaging when it comes to delivering or postpartum care or creating your care team of there's no right way to do this?
Yeah, I think the thing that struck me when I first became pregnant was how much pressure there was to pick a camp and to kind of like brand yourself of like the crunchy versus the medical. And so it was almost positioned to me, it was like either you want to have a home birth in a tub and Enya's playing, or you want to be in the hospital, give me all the drugs, let me know when it's over. And you know, I think lots of people do relate to each of those 2 buckets, but for me, I was somewhere in between, and I kind of resonated with elements of both of those. I wanted to give birth in a hospital, but I wanted to be seen as a whole person. I wanted birth to be treated like the life event that it is. I wanted to be part of decision making. And so when we were first creating Oula, we kind of were like, let's ignore these camps. Let's just look at the research. How do you create the best outcomes, not only for baby, but also for mom? Because what we know is a happy mom is a happy baby. And we really believe that the best experiences really do deliver the best outcomes. And so what we created was, it's a hospital birth, but we have midwives, we have OBs, and they are really centering making decisions with you instead of for you. So we have 3 clinics in New York right now, and we'll be announcing some new states soon, so we're really excited about that.
And Brittany, in terms of you having kids in such different age brackets and like facing, I'm sure, very different things with a 17-year-old and a 1-year-old, how do you navigate parenting in a there's no right way mindset? Like, how are you parenting so differently with each kid?
I'm someone who likes to know all the data and stats before. I like to make an informed decision, and so for me, I like to research what my oldest daughter is a little bit more reserved, and I have to be very open with her about like, okay, let's have a conversation. Tell me your thoughts. I know for us to have a good conversation, I need to sit down and show that I'm making the time for her specifically. And I think that's very important for how I raise my other ones. My middle one is a fireball. Like, she just owns the room. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually scared when she's gonna be a teenager because she's not gonna be like my oldest one. But I'm very aware, I'm trying not to compare my kids. And I think that's what is the challenge, where people will say, oh, well, they're completely opposite than the other one. But there's so many good parts about each of my kids, and I do not like when people say like, oh, is your little one a good baby or a bad baby? It's like, he's a baby, he's not good or bad. So I feel like it's very much of like not labeling the kids and just letting them be themselves and trying to understand where they're coming from. And my 3-year-old, she's trying to express her emotions, and sometimes she gets overwhelmed, and I'm trying to come down to her level and say, what's going on? How are you feeling? Trying to really put that into a word for her. But, you know, she's a little still.
Right.
So you have to have patience.
The labels thing is so true, because I remember my first slept just like very easily. Like, he just took to sleeping. And my second was like, I am not sleeping at all. And people kept being like, oh, is it hard having like a bad sleeper? I'm like, well, it's not that he's bad. It's just he doesn't like it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to figure it out.
He just wants to sleep on me. And that's kind of how we're going about it in the beginning. Kim, in terms of there's no right way, I feel really strongly that there's no right way to feed your baby.
Me too.
And it's something I talk about a lot. We have worked together for a few years. I've been Bobbie's biggest fan ever since my first took formula. How did the concept of there's no right way to feed a baby play into the building and also the branding of Bobbie?
Well, our company was built on the experience of our co-founder and CEO, Laura Modi, who had her baby in San Francisco. She realized she had a case of mastitis. She wasn't able to feed her baby. She went to the pharmacy at 2 a.m. She started turning around the label and saying, what is this? What is in this formula? And why do I feel so guilty about having to feed my baby something else? And she wanted to put a better product on the market, and she wanted parents to understand what's in the product that they're feeding to their baby in the same way that we understand what's in the granola bar that I'm choosing to eat today, or what's in the snack that I'm giving my kid. And there was also an opportunity to build a brand that truly speaks to the modern mom's experience, which is that, to Joanne's point, there is no one way to feed. There's no bucket that you can be put in. It doesn't have to be so divisive of this, either you're like a breastfeeding mom or you're a formula feeding mom and one is better than the other. If you're a mom that's feeding your baby, you're a fucking great mom. Like, end of story. And sorry, I'll curse a little bit when I get worked up, but I think that we have to just stop the divisiveness within the motherhood space. It's because people are trying to compartmentalize what mom are you, and like how you give birth or how you feed your baby all of a sudden is your identity, and that's not it. It ebbs and flows throughout that first year. And we know at Bobbie, I think we were pretty floored when we saw the first research we did that 70% of the moms who come to us are combo feeding. So that means they're doing some sort of breast milk, some sort of formula. It could be like 1 bottle a day or 1 breastfeeding session a day or pump session. And it was really eye-opening to see the fluidity that happens there. And again, like, these women are not one or the other, right? And to hear that out of the 70%, 80% of those moms said feeling like they were allowed to or could turn to formula actually allowed them to breastfeed longer. And I think that's a narrative that, like, we don't talk about enough, and parents aren't sharing those stories. And so as a brand, we're here to share those real stories and those real experiences and help people feel empowered in their choices.
I think it's so important, especially in any aspect of life, but especially in parenting and motherhood, is that it doesn't have to be all or none. Like, I love that gray area personally. And it's very fascinating going through, not that I know parenting in any other time of life, but to be a parent in this era of social media, because we're being thrown 10,000 different videos as consumers of like, this is how you should do this and this is how you should do that. And then as creators, it's also, you're putting something out and there's tons of opinions coming back at you of like, you're doing this the wrong way. I would love to know how all of you navigate as parents and consumers of social media. How do you decide whose opinion and whose voice you can trust and whose you can follow and who you go to for potential guidance? Like, I know for me, I have a strict rule when it comes to if I have a question about something or I'm looking for advice on something, I have like my North Star of person who I really resonate with, who has degrees in this area, and then it's like my 2 friends who I trust and my doctor. And anyone else, I'm not asking for their opinion, and it doesn't hold weight for me. How do you navigate that? And who, if there is someone specific, do you feel that you turn to in the era of social media?
My husband and I would say, we're the biggest team, and we are constantly having little brainstorming sessions together. And we're so much like that with parenting. We really do tune out. We have to tune out people that might have an opinion, but we don't really love their track record in that. So it's hard to take advice from someone who hasn't been through it fully, and for us, we want to be successful with what we're doing. And with parenting, my success for parenting would be that my kids they feel loved, they feel happy, they feel secure at home, and they know their parents will do whatever for them. Not to the point where they have no boundaries and they have, free for all and there's no rules at all. But I want them to know that home is a safe spot for them. And that's something that we always think about with parenting decisions when we're talking about, okay, what are we gonna, Poppy's becoming, she's gonna start school age soon. We're thinking about all these things with that in mind. And I think you really have to find your person that you can talk to, that you value their opinion, but you also value what they're doing, and their life actually shows it.
Mm-hmm. What about you guys?
I think my opinion of social media has actually changed since becoming a mom, almost for the better, in a sense that, there's so much you don't know, that if you can curate the people that really uplift, that you're doing a great job and you're doing the best you can, it actually can be a source of positivity, but it does require you to really curate on your end. And to me, it goes back to there's no right way. I unfollow anybody who's really black and white of there being a particular way of doing anything. And anyone that's gonna make me feel like the thing I'm doing my best at doing is just not good enough, I just don't need that in my life. And there isn't one right way, as is obviously the theme here. I do think, like, when you talk about sort of expertise and opinions, everyone has an opinion these days. At the same time, the experts are often not actually approachable, or they're not practical, and I do think we need to see more kind of collaborations and sort of crossing of people who know how to create approachable content and the expertise coming together.
And I would add, one of my favorite Southern phrases is that you are a reflection of the company you keep. And I think that not only goes with your friends, but when you're scrolling through your Instagram of people that you have chosen or accounts that you have chosen to follow, those are a reflection of your beliefs and how you show up in the world. And you start to absorb that energy, right? Like, are those people controversial? Are they really trying to put something out there just to get clickbait? Is it positive? Is it supportive? Is it uplifting? Does it bring joy to your day? Or does it stir your internal pot? And I would ask that as a mom, you have to protect your energy, you have to protect your space, and the digital space is a really big one. So think about how those accounts make you feel and who you're surrounding yourself with digitally as well.
I think about this all the time as a consumer. I'm constantly editing my feed and who I'm following. And I even say, as a creator, if my content is making you feel any type of negative way, leave. I would love for you to be in a happier space. I can be here if you want to come back, or you don't have to come back at all. In terms of parenting, we make 10,000 decisions every single minute of every day, it feels like. I feel like it never stops. And with each decision, what we've been talking about is there's always, or there can be, certain judgments or opinions or feelings of shame. And I want to talk with you, Kim, about feeding. You mentioned that 70% of the people who are coming to Bobbie are combo feeding, and I think it's nearly half, I read, were potentially lying about it because they felt shame.
Yes, this is so interesting.
It's wild to me, and we've talked about this offline or off in front of an audience, but I had a reel about why I chose to stop breastfeeding and formula feed to protect my mental health, as someone who noticed I really struggled with my mental health after my first, and breastfeeding played a huge role in it for me. That was my journey, and why I chose Bobbie and turned to you all. What is up with the shame around formula? And do you have any concept of why anyone actually cares? Because I really can't figure it out. Like, if it is not your baby,
I mean, I will
why
be
do
the
you
first to say this, and I believe this to be true as a mother of 3 children. Breast milk is the best source of nutrition for your baby. And it always doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. And that second half of the conversation is the one that we're trying to uplift for parents, because of course we know the data, of course we know the facts, but we also work full time and have multiple children and need to take medication and have breast cancer and double mastectomies like this amazing Bobbie breastie that is sitting in the front row. These choices, we call it a choice. Sometimes it's not a choice. Sometimes it's not a choice. And shouldn't you feel good about how you're feeding your baby? It's just not a source of guilt. It should not be a source of guilt. And so I'd also say, if it is a choice, good for you. And the good for you is a phrase I use all the time. Like, why can't we just respond to someone's choices as good for you? That's what works for you. And we see this happening not only with feeding, but gosh, I've been, deep in this motherhood space for the past 5 years, launching this company, growing this company, becoming a mother myself. And it's so wild to me how all of a sudden, very simple things like sending your baby to daycare, wanting your baby to sleep through the night, how you feed your baby, how you give birth is all of a sudden coming with a label of how good of a mom you are. And I just don't subscribe to it, and I don't think anybody should, but it's going to take people feeling confident and understanding their choices and advocating for themselves, whatever that may be, to move out of this like toxic state of digital motherhood right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but like the need for opinions and for commenting on the opinions is absolutely wild to me. And I also don't subscribe to any type of label or any type of thing making you a good mom, especially when it comes to feeding. Brittany, you've had 3 very different deliveries with each child, which I'm fascinated to learn more about. But I would love to know, as someone who's a public-facing figure, did you feel or receive any type of judgment for any of your different experiences that you had and therefore shared?
No, I'm very much, my belief is that you have to be the CEO of your own health, and making a decision as a CEO would about their business, looking at what's in front of you, what's the best for you. And with my daughter Jaden, I had a C-section, and what I regret about that now is I don't feel like I was informed to know what exactly the C-section, first of all, was going to be like, and then the vaginal seeding, which is really important for the gut health of the baby, none of that was communicated to me, right? So I felt like my doctor at the time made the C-section very much like, this is easier for you because you're a young mom. And looking back now, I was very much like, okay, whatever you think, that's good. So with my daughter Poppy, so I've had each type of birth. I've had a C-section, I've had an epidural, and I've had a non-medicated birth. So with Poppy, the OBGYN I was with at the time really said, I want to schedule your C-section. You're going to have a C-section, like your baby's head's big, it's going to happen. What I realized through all that was you have to ask your doctor what their C-section rate is. And a lot of the times, healthcare, it's no secret here that it is a for-profit business, and doctors can make more on a C-section birth, and it's scheduled Monday through Friday. So for me, all the facts for me were, I've had a baby 14 years ago, why can't I try to have a VBAC? I had to move doctors at 38 weeks to be the CEO of my own health, because they were very much like, you can do it, you'll do the C-section, it's fine. I felt like I wasn't supported, and I wasn't being listened to. So I had to tune out the fact that that doctor for sure was judging me, that I was not listening to them and scheduling the C-section. It was actually a lot of pushback I had to do, and I felt very weird leaving the office. But all that to say, I had a very successful VBAC, and I was very happy with my recovery, and I know I took that on myself because no doctor was looking out for me like I was looking out for myself. And the last one was an unplanned medicated because I got to the hospital too late.
That was literally my biggest fear.
Almost had him in the car.
Hence why I went to the hospital 3 times before I actually delivered a baby.
Can I ask about that really quickly?
Slide out.
Because you just hit on something that I feel like I want every mom in here to walk out of, or if you want to be a mom someday. But we have this saying at Bobbie that's, When you become a parent, you inherently become an activist, whether that's for yourself or for your child or for your baby, but learning to speak up for yourself and what you want is so, so, so important. And I think about the fact that, like, I had a hard time even telling the lady at the nail salon that I didn't like the color. Like, that's a real experience. Like, we have to learn how to use our voices for what we want, and especially when it comes to our healthcare and our choices as a parent and what we think and we know is best for our own babies. Your voice is so important, and you should always listen to what you feel.
I want to actually blend the activism and the question that we were just discussing in terms of like the feelings of judgment and leading into the decisions you're making. Joanne, do you feel like moms, kind of what Brittany was experiencing, and I'm sure this played into the creation of Oula, feel judgment from their care team? And for any potential mom out there or someone who is a mom and is going to be pregnant again, like, what advice do you have when creating a care team to make sure you are creating a space where you feel safe and comfortable being the advocate for your health, so that even if there is judgment, you're still comfortable advocating for yourself?
Yeah, totally. And actually, I just want to validate one thing that Brittany was saying. When you look at the data, inductions and C-sections go up right before the holidays. And so it's, it becomes a scheduling thing rather than a medical thing. And so it does sort of just lend to the fact that you need to be watching out for, what is the rationale, and does it make sense to me, even if you're not the expert yourself? If there's anything I've learned about parenting, it's just like a constant journey of worrying if you're getting it right. It's high pressure, and you want the best for your kids. You want them to be better than you were in various ways, and that creates insecurity, and that creates judgment. In the birth space, you hear a lot of conversation about birth plans, and birth plans have become controversial, but they shouldn't. But there's sort of two sides to the birth plan story. So what the medical providers would say about birth plans is they'd be like, birth is unpredictable, there's no such thing as a birth plan, like, you need to have your expectations set, you can't be doing this. On the other side, though, and the reason why the concept has come about is because you're saying, hey, I don't feel like I'm going to be heard when I'm in there. I want to be able to have a conversation with you ahead of time about what my preferences are, and they can be birth preferences. We know that birth is unpredictable, and it can go a variety of ways. We create a little birth plan tool for you at Oula, which is really meant to be a conversation starter between you and your provider to say, hey, here are the things that matter to me. I would really like to try for a VBAC, or I want to try to do it unmedicated. But also creating a space that it's okay to change your mind. You don't necessarily know what you're going to want. And that's no idea. You might have some things where you're like, I know I don't want a C-section, or I know, whatever. But
wait, can I just say, like, you might not want a C-section.
You might not want a C-section, but then you need to be prepared in case you need to have a C-section.
Yeah.
So you need to have that whole conversation so you don't go in so blindly. And then you need the space to be able to change your mind. I think that's the other thing, is it's like, this whole like medicated or not medicated is such a like camp thing. You have to pick a camp. For me, I was like, I've never done labor before. I don't know what it's going to feel like. I want to try and do it unmedicated, and then if it sucks, I want to say I want the epidural, and that should be okay, and I don't want to feel like I'm a failure for that. So we really think about building care teams that are really supportive of that. We straight up screen for any care provider that believes like you have to have an epidural or you have to not have an epidural. Like, there's no space for that. Yeah. We're all just figuring it out.
There shouldn't be. And my doula was someone who, when we were doing our birth wish list, which is what we called it, because you can't really have a plan with something like this, it was so helpful because she was asking me questions that I would have never known. Like, I don't know about when they do cord cutting or baths or any of those things, because I had no concept. I hadn't delivered a baby before. In terms of postpartum, we've talked about the many different ways to do things and the judgment that one can feel during parenting. My first postpartum absolutely rocked me in ways that I was not prepared for. Kim, I've told you this, but Bobbie was like a part of my village, truly, especially when it came to postpartum, because it allowed me the opportunity to begin my formula feeding journey with my first at month 5 and with my second at week 8, because it just wasn't working for us. How do you feel that Bobbie supports their clientele or their family through these postpartum periods?
So what's really interesting is we get these things we call love letters at Bobbie, and we didn't ever expect this. You usually get like a Google review, which is pretty par for the course for a D2C company. we started getting long emails from people thanking us after they left Bobbie and leaving the company, because their baby turned a year and they're off formula. And they took the time to do this. And what the through line that came so clearly through was people would say, "You saved me." And like that shook us as a company because we thought we were, we're there to help feed their baby, right? We're there to nourish their kids and help them grow in that first year. But to hear the mom say, "You saved me," we realized it was so much bigger. And it was how we were showing up for them, just even in trying to create joyful content, from the stickers on the lids or the emails that you get from our company, in a way where you feel confident and supported in your choices, and that formula feeding parents deserve to have joy in that experience too. And so we do that. We also connect our moms all of our parents in a really great way. We build community through, for example, we use these little cards in our subscription boxes that go out to across the entire country. We've had 70,000 letters that have been written to Congress to change laws coming from our community. So it's a shared values where you're galvanizing people towards a shared goal. We have a community of Bobbie breasties who are women who have had mastectomies or gynecological cancer, physically cannot breastfeed. We sponsor them for a full year of formula, and we're working to change the law because those women can get a free breast pump through our Insurance Care Act, but they can't get formula to feed their babies. So we try to advocate on behalf of our community, and we bring everyone along for the ride.
It's so, so important. Yeah, let's clap for that. Joanne, how do you feel that Oula is best supporting your patients through postpartum? And for anyone here who is potentially going to experience a postpartum, what advice would you give to them in terms of how to set themselves up for success?
So one of my favorite midwives, Casey, she always says that you think of postpartum as being like a couple of months, but really postpartum is the rest of your life.
Forever.
And it is true because, you think, there's so much attention on the birth, and then there's like lesser attention, but still attention on that acute period right afterwards. But you're setting up sort of structures and ways of being that are going to carry you into postpartum and into your life as a parent. And so I really think there's sort of like, there's mindset and boundaries that need to be set up before you're even postpartum, as well as the literal support structures in the village. When I think about the mindset piece, is one thing that I was not prepared for was how much pressure there was to love it. And it's okay to not love every minute. The highs are high and the lows are low. And I remember this older woman approached me when I was in the middle of a sleep regression and feeding issues, and I was so sleep deprived and I was not loving it. And she was like, "Just enjoy every second." And I almost screamed at her. There is just no. And then also when you thinking about setting up sort of your village and your boundaries with your friends and your family, we had a rule in those early days that there were no guests to our house, there were only helpers, and if you weren't going to have a chore, you are not actually welcome. There's no baby viewing that is helpful for me right now. That's a boundary, and it's hard for a lot of us to set those kinds of boundaries up. Or even, I was like a milk machine at the beginning when I was breastfeeding in the early days. And so I said I would change no diapers in the first month. I literally did not know how, therefore I was not the right person to do it.
Good for you.
And so that's what has to be done. But the final thing I would say is really on the village point and the support team. We started something called Oula Circles for this exact community reason of, yes, the medical care is important. You need to know what to look out for. You need to know warning signs. This is critical. But really, you need to be going through it with other people who are also going through it. You want to be able to vent. You want to be able to just not feel so alone. And it's a really powerful sort of surface area for connectedness.
The village is so important.
Village is important.
Whether it's family, friends, paid help, anyone that you can get to help support you is vital. Brittany, you gave birth to your first at a younger age. So how did you feel, did you feel more prepared your second and third time around with postpartum? And how were those two so different?
I think about this, and I really don't remember the day-to-day with my first daughter. I was working full-time. I was going to school full-time. I was writing papers really late after. I was on zero sleep with her, but I also was 20, so I don't know, I just had more energy.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I'm a lot more tired, a lot quicker. So it's like one of those things, you can go out forever when you're 20 days in a row, and no, not, now I'm like, I very much prioritize sleep. And with Poppy, when we had her, oh my gosh, I was so thrown off. I thought I could do the exact same work while also having a baby and figuring it all out, and I knew that was not the case. I didn't even really take a maternity leave, which I do not recommend for anyone's mental health to do that, and just jump back into shooting the next week. It was nuts. So for this time with Elliot, he's almost 1, we thought he's gonna sleep in our bed, we're not gonna have a schedule, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get sleep, and I track my sleep on the Oura Ring, and my sleep was in the 90s because I was going to bed at literally 7:30 and he was sleeping on me, and I couldn't tell some people that because at the hospital, actually, when I spent the night there, I had him sleeping on me, and the nurse wanted me to sign a thing that said I was denying putting him in his little crate thing. And so I signed it. I'm like, am I going to get what is it? Is it a crate?
It's like a bassinet.
A
What is it
bassinet.
called? A bassinet.
It's not a crate, but
Do you have dogs?
I know. But I had to sign this paperwork I was like, am I going to get my kid taken away from? Yeah. But yeah, that was, I thought, I'm going to do whatever I can sleep better, because then I'm going to be a better mom. And that's the way I've enjoyed this one a lot.
I mean, it's truly about figuring out what works for your family. And,
Right.
My 2 kids, we did things very differently, especially when it came to sleep. Like, I never thought I'd be someone who co-slept, but I pretty much co-slept with my second because that was the only way he was shutting his eyes, quite honestly. Thank you all so much. This was so much fun, and I really feel such an important conversation. I just want to quickly ask you all if you can share, and I'll go to, but where is the best place that everyone can support you and get more of you? I'm Cameron Oaks Rogers on Instagram, TikTok, and my show is Conversations with Cam. It's a lot of this type of discussion. Brittany?
I'm Brittany. My Instagram is Brittany Xavier. My TikTok is the same. I have a YouTube channel, and I just started a podcast with Dear Media that launched last month. It's called The Long Game. It's about longevity and living well.
And I'm Joanne, but I'm here on behalf of Oula, and you should follow Oula Health on Instagram or oulahealth.com. And really, it's meant to be an educational resource and a place to really bridge that expertise and that approachability.
So our website is hibobbie.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Bobbie. We also have an incredible podcast with Dear Media called Milk Drunk, which is really just a parenting conversation, really raw, open, honest. It's hosted by Tabria Majors. So if you guys are interested, please go listen to that podcast as well. If you don't want to follow me on Instagram, I'm really boring.
Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you all for the conversation.